my name is Stephen Scannell, and I am the conference chair for the upcoming Oregon Science Teachers Association conference, which we're having at Gresham High School on October 13th.
Go Gophers!
14th. And Joe's a big Gopher fan.
I think I know the fight song.
So, I see Carrie Snyder just joined us. Awesome. So also I am I'm currently the past president of Oregon Science Teachers Association. So our presidential cycle is 3 years. And it's just been a real joy to be able to work with so many great science educators in the state of Oregon. And so I would just like to invite all of you, and it's so great to see so many people from around the state, to stay engaged with Oregon Science Teachers Association. And we are hoping to have our conference next year in Eugene, and we try to get around the state. And so, and we're also realigning to connect with the STEM hubs in each region. So hopefully there will be more opportunities for engagement and for you all to participate in supporting and improving STEM education in Oregon. Joe and I met a couple years ago through Oregon Science Teachers Association, and he was one of our teacher awardees. And we started a little back and forth through astronomy. He was running an astronomy program through Ida B. Wells School. And I've just really been impressed with his dedication to science teaching and to astronomy and engaging kids in authentic science. So through that and the eclipse coming up on the 14th, the conversation started about how can we support teachers in both teaching about the eclipse for their with their students, and then also how to safely observe. And I would just like to let everybody know that the next eclipse will be Monday, April 8th, 2024. And so even if you're not able to observe the one coming up next week, hopefully you can set the stage for something in April. So Joe, thank you so very much for being here, and looking very much to your presentation.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. It's really an honor and a pleasure to present to OSTA and all of you wonderful educators and student teachers and retired teachers and from all around the state. One thing you need to know about me is I'm a proud Oregonian. It's interesting in Portland when you meet somebody who was actually born here, and both my parents born here, and going back to the Oregon Trail on my mother's side. And I love Portland. I love Chiloquin. I love Joseph. I love Steens Mountain. And wherever you're from, I've been there. And Oregon is my home, and teaching children is my business, and youth and teachers. So here's the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to kind of tell you the plan for the day. Here we go. I'm sharing my screen. And this is, here we go. So welcome. So I've created a website. I have a website, which we're going to go to in a second. And I have a web page on that website called Annular Eclipse Lessons. I'm going to go to that right after this page together. And then after we do that, I'm going to give you a presentation called Understanding the Annular Eclipse of October 14th, 2023. It's a substantial slideshow. It's about 50 minutes. And you're provided it on Google Drive. And I'll make sure you all have access by the end of the day. And you can take that and modify it for your students if you want. You know, cut it down to 5 slides or whatever, or watch it again or whatever. I also, during the slideshow, I'm going to refer to a bunch of activities. And a few of them, after the slideshow, I'm going to demonstrate the activities. And these activities are on my webpage with stuff you could do tomorrow, mostly with supplies that you already have in your classroom. And that's the next, then modeling some of the activities. And then I have another slideshow called How to Observe the Eclipse Safely. You learn that I like to alternate titles to everything. And one of my all-time favorite movies is Dr. Strangelove, alternate title, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. If you've never seen that movie, I think it's the greatest movie in the history of humankind. A movie about the end of the world is good, in my opinion. My wife would beg to differ. So I titled this one, How I Learned to Stop Worrying, Love Annularity. And questions and answers, but you should really interrupt me at any time with questions or put it in the chat. I've instructed Steve and Lori to let me know if something comes up in the chat, because when you're sharing your screen, you can't see that. And then we'll get to that in a little bit. So let's go to my website real quick. So what I think I want to do here is now, I practiced everything I thought, but now I want to go to a different, I want to stop sharing, and then I want to share again. But I want to share a different tab on Google. Steve, how do I do that? I messed up again. So here we go. I know what I do. I do this. There we go. Now I'm going to go back here. I'm going to share again, and here we go. I'll be smoother at that. This is my website. So at the end, if you're really interested in learning more about me, I'm a semi-retired educator. I'm still working full-time, but kind of on my own. And I do a bunch of projects. All my astronomy projects are under here. The one we're going to right now is Annular Eclipse Lessons. If you click on that, and that's the web address that's in the link, what I've got here is I'm doing a bunch of lessons at Chiloquin schools. That's a small village, 99% free and reduced lunch, 60% Native American in the Klamath Basin, where my parents grew up and a bunch of my cousins teach. My wife and I are going there for the week, and we're doing Eclipse Fest for just the people of Chiloquin. It's not advertised anywhere, and it doesn't cost anything, and we're not being paid. And I put my lesson plans there for the high school students, the junior high school students, the fifth and sixth grade. I don't really have lesson plans for K through 4, to be honest. Those are not my wheelhouse, but we're going to make it happen. And then here I have the version. Here it says Understanding the Annular Eclipse of October 14th, 2023. There's the teacher version. I'm also giving a bunch of public versions, and for different grades. I haven't edited those down yet. And there's how to enjoy an eclipse safely, and understanding eclipse advanced topics. If you happen to teach astronomy or physics in the high school, you might want to do that. And then I have just a zillion different activities that I do around eclipses. You can, most but not all of these will be referred to in the talk. You can click on any of these. Many of these are my original activities with my write-ups, and some of them are stuff of favorites of mine from the internet. So if you see an activity I talk about in the presentation, you can come here and find it and teach it tomorrow. And then I have a bunch of other resources. And if you're unable to actually watch the eclipse or it's cloudy, I'm providing you with 3 sources where you can stream the eclipse, and you could give that to your students, because you know how they love to go on their phone, and it's not the same as watching it for real, but they can go ahead and at least see the annular eclipse. All right, so I'm going to dig in then to Understanding the Annular Eclipse of October 14th, 2023, alternate title, Eclipses and Ellipses. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, so here's some pictures of ellipses. Eclipses, excuse me. And I'm not going to tell you much about them at this point, just to get us warmed up. There will be a quiz at the end of the talk where I'm going to encourage you to identify all of the different ellipses. So what is it I want you to learn? I want you to learn what is an eclipse and what is an ellipse and how are they related to eclipses. So that's what I want you to learn, big picture. But I got some details of what I want you to learn about eclipses. What's an eclipse? What's an umbra? What's a penumbra? What's a lunar eclipse, a solar eclipse, a total solar eclipse, an annular solar eclipse? What do phases of the moon have to do with eclipses? And what's a partial eclipse and a total eclipse? All right, So we'll see if we actually learn those things today. I'll have that slide again at the end. All right, so what's an eclipse? An eclipse is when an astronomical body is in the shadow of another astronomical body. And that's anywhere in our solar system, anywhere in our galaxy, anywhere in the universe. Here's a wonderful picture. Eclipses have been known by all cultures for all time. What a great way to add some multicultural add. Now, not all cultures have records of eclipses, but many do. And when I taught this at any school, I would often, or always ask the kids, I'd send home an email to poll grandma and grandpa, religious leaders, community leaders, if anybody could come up with an eclipse story from their culture. There's a lesson for you right there. Everyone share their eclipse stories from their culture. There are some recordings of ancient eclipses. The Babylonians and the ancient Chinese not only have records of observing eclipses 4,500 years ago, but they were able to predict them. Yes, friends, astronomy was the first science. And we know a lot about the Chinese astronomical tradition. They thought solar eclipses were associated with health and success of the emperor, and failing to predict one might put him in danger. And there's a legend. The two astrologers, they were called astrologers back then. By the way, I have a whole separate lesson on what is astrology, what is astronomy. It may be a little different than you're guessing. Most astronomers just diss astrology. I do not favor dissing anyone's culture or spiritual beliefs ever for any reason. And I have a lesson that ties ancient astrology into modern science that I'm very proud of. Maybe we could do that talk sometime. Anyway, C and Ho were executed, so goes the legend, for failing to predict a solar eclipse. The students always like that because they think that, just failing a test, they get to do a retake, not even flunk, much less execution. Historians believe that they failed to observe an eclipse of October 22nd, 2134 BCE. And that would make it the oldest solar eclipse ever recorded and written down. Unless you count this one. This is a burial mound in what is now Ireland. And because we have the heavens that act as clockwork, we can make computer programs and trace things backward. And we now know that this, whoops, and somehow my Zoom toolbar is hiding part of my slide. There we go. No, it's not. So this is the eclipse of November 30th, 3340 BCE, maybe the earliest known recorded eclipse. We ran the computer program backward and we found this eclipse and the stars in that position. And if that doesn't blow you in your students' minds, I don't know what will. And of course, so much about history is about war. There was the Great Battle of the Eclipse, but this one has a good story that I find inspirational. May 28th, 585 BCE, perhaps the oldest dated historical event, the eclipse of Talysh, it ended because there was an eclipse and both sides decided it was a bad omen or the gods speaking or the goddesses speaking or something. But anyway, they declared a truce. So I always try to encourage my students to find some way to make natural events meaning that we're supposed to stop fighting about something, start caring about others, feeding the homeless, doing something good. All right, now into the science of it. Umbra and penumbra. First of all, those are fun words to say, umbra and penumbra. So the umbra is the dark part of a shadow. If you're in the umbra of an eclipse or the umbra of a shadow, you can't see any part of the light source. It's totally eclipsed. If you're in the penumbra, the gray part of the shadow, you can see part of the light source. It's partially eclipsed. Now here's a little picture that I drew, and I think I figured out how to do this. I'm going to put on the spotlight here. So here is some random light source, and here is a shadow source, and I am just having the hardest time. And you can have your students, high school level or maybe middle school, you can model this with a demo, and then you can draw a line from the top of the light source to the top of the shadow source and the bottom to the bottom. I'm so sorry about that. And they come to a point. And this is the umbra. If you are in here, either in a classroom demo or an eclipse, you can't see any of the light source. You're in the umbra, the dark part of the shadow. But if you draw a line from the bottom of the light source to the top of the shadow source, you'll notice, and vice versa, the top to the bottom, you get an outward cone. That's the gray part of the shadow, the penumbra. The penumbra. And here's a little demonstration you can do, which I'll show you later. Very easy. You could do this tomorrow. The students take a light source, any light source. I'll demonstrate ones I particularly like. You hold it, one student hold it above the student hand and onto a white sheet. I just put a white sheet on a piece of clipboard, and you can see the umbra. If you were a little ant or a cell or just an imaginary tiny human right here, palm of the person's hand, you would not see any of the light source, or off on the narrow parts of the fingers, that's umbra. But here you can see the gray part of the shadow. That's the penumbra. And if you're out there in the penumbra, you can see part of the light source. Very fun activity to wrap your hand around these very important ideas. Here's another one. You can just take a flashlight and a pencil or anything like that, and the students can create their own umbra. Do you see the dark converging triangle? If you were a little ant right there, you couldn't see any part of the flashlight. But if you're out here in the expanding gray part, the penumbra, you can see part of the light source. That is pretty cool. Occasionally in this talk, I'll say, hey, activity. And I will show you those activities. Those activities are written up on the web page, and I'll demonstrate them for you at the end of the talk. So there's two main kinds of eclipses involving the sun, earth, and the moon. Lunar eclipses and solar eclipses. Now, many of your students won't even know which is which. And even as an astronomy fan, I don't think I got this straight till about 7th grade, because there's a difference between what's being eclipsed and what's doing the eclipsing. So the lunar eclipse is when the shadow of the earth covers the moon, whereas a solar eclipse is when the shadow of the moon covers a small portion of the earth. The moon blocks the view of the sun. So the adjective here is what identifies the astronomical body being eclipsed. To summarize, lunar eclipses are when the moon is eclipsed. Lunar eclipses only occur at full moon. Now, it's been tradition and standards for years for middle schoolers to learn about the phases of the moon. I taught middle school for 16 years, and I taught that. But then I also taught high school for, 25 more years, and I taught a fair amount of college and even graduate school. And I found that most people don't really understand the phases of the moon. And so I think we have to keep teaching that over and over. And you really understand the phases of the moon when you understand why a lunar eclipse can only occur at the full moon. So here's your standard phases of the moon picture. The sun's over here at the right, far away, with parallel light coming in. And here's your Earth in the middle. And it shows all the phases. For now, let's just look at the full moon. The full moon is over there because the sunlight is hitting the side of the moon that is visible from Earth. And if we're going to have the shadow of the Earth hide the moon, that's only going to happen at a full moon. Lunar eclipses only happen at a full moon. Now, you might say, hey, according to that picture, shouldn't we have a lunar eclipse every lunar cycle, every month? Well, remember I told you that there was an advanced slideshow? And that's one of the questions that's addressed in the advanced slideshow. The answer in one sentence is, if everything was in a plane, we would have a solar and lunar eclipse every month. But the orbit of the moon about the Earth is tilted a few degrees from the orbit of the Earth about the sun, so we only have eclipses occasionally. So one of my all-time favorite activities is teaching the phases of the moon. And I find that so many students know, they've learned before, the names of the phases of the moon, but why they occur, they can't really explain. So about 30 years ago, I developed a discovery kit that's hands-on manipulative, pre-internet, and I still like it. And it's also on the web page if you teach phases of the moon. So here's a picture I really like here. Here's a lunar eclipse that's now sort of looking like our simple drawing of the umbra and penumbra, but it's pointing the other direction. There's the sun. The sun hits the Earth. Draw a line from the top of the sun to the top of the Earth. bottom to the bottom, and you get the umbra. The diagram is not to scale, of course. You can't really draw astronomical diagrams to scale, but the moon is sufficiently small compared to the Earth's umbra that the moon is in the umbra. It's totally eclipsed for several hours, 2 hours at least, every time there's a lunar eclipse. That will become important later. The moon is entirely in the umbra for a few hours, which means if it was clear everywhere, half the people on the Earth could see a lunar eclipse. And indeed, I've seen 30 or so lunar eclipses in my life, but I've only seen 2 solar eclipses. So many people jump to the conclusion that solar eclipses are less common, and that's wrong. Solar eclipses are just as common, slightly more common. There's a teaser for you. Let's see if we can't figure it out. Although that's mostly covered in the advanced show. Lunar eclipse lasts for hours. Total lunar eclipses. And they're in the penumbra even longer. Now, solar eclipses. Solar eclipses are when the sun is eclipsed. They happen only at the new moon. Here's that same picture. Here's the sunlight from the right. Here's the Earth. The new moon here, of course, is when the side of the moon that's illuminated is away from the Earth. It's new, the ancient people in many cultures called it, because it had been getting smaller and smaller, and then it starts the cycle over. Nothing really new about it. It's the dark moon. It's the moon you can't really see except for Earth shine, which is a different topic. Now let's think about that. Here you've got the sunlight coming in, and it's hitting the moon, which is casting a shadow on Earth. That is a solar eclipse because the moon is blocking the sun. It has to be a new moon. Solar eclipses, though, don't last for hours. They last for minutes. And half the Earth cannot see a solar eclipse. Just a tiny fraction of the Earth can see the solar eclipse. A tiny strip of the Earth is in the moon's umbra for a very short period of time. In fact, the longest solar eclipse ever anywhere on the Earth is about 7.5 minutes. And it's usually shorter. So here's that picture now. The light from the sun is coming in from the left. It's hitting the moon, which of course is 1/4 the diameter of the Earth. So its shadow is smaller. So the Earth is not immersed in the moon's umbra. The moon's umbra just traces a really tiny dot on the Earth. And actually in an annular eclipse, jumping to the end of the talk, no part of the umbra hits the Earth. The umbra is up in the tip of the umbra, the focal point is above the surface of the Earth just a little bit. We'll come back to that. So the reason I've seen 30 or so lunar eclipses is because half of the time there's a lunar eclipse on the Earth, I can see it if it's clear. And some fraction of the time it's clear, and I always go look. But usually when there's a solar eclipse, it's far away from the Earth from where I am. And while I do love astronomy and solar eclipses, I am not Mick Jagger, right? Remember Mick Jagger and Carly Simon? You flew the total, took your Learjet to see the total eclipse of the sun, right? Yeah. Carly was making fun of Mick. Or was it Warren Beatty? We'll never know. But one of those rich guys for flying around the world to watch solar eclipses. I have friends who do that, but I can't afford that, and it violates my conservation principles anyway. That's why I've only seen 2, the 2 that happened in Oregon in the 70s when I was a teenager, and 3 years ago, I went to Western Oregon University. So they're just as common solar eclipses, but less common to see. What a great extra credit question for a high schooler. And here are just a picture of the paths of solar eclipses over 50 years. You can see with the date, it's just a narrow path that hits just a tiny section of the Earth. Oh, fun. A given spot on the Earth, on average, only sees a total solar eclipse every 360 years. So we were quite lucky to have one in our neck of the woods 6 years ago, and we're still quite lucky to have one in our neck of the woods, even though it's annular. All right, so partial eclipse versus total eclipse. I kind of already taught this, but to review, when you're in the umbra, you witness a total solar eclipse. When you're in the penumbra, you witness a partial solar eclipse. And I love this picture. So let's start at the bottom. Here's the sun. Here's the Earth with its giant shadow. The moon is totally eclipsed for hours. Here is the sun at a solar eclipse. The moon is much smaller. The umbra is tiny. And as everything's moving, that traces out a path on the Earth. The penumbra is larger, but it still only covers a relatively small fraction of the Earth. Do you think you could sketch those two diagrams in your own hand and explain the difference between a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse? Could you also explain penumbra and umbra? Could you explain why people think lunar eclipses are more common, but they're not? They're just more commonly witnessed. Did you learn what I wanted you to learn? Let's think about this. What is an eclipse? What's an umbra? A penumbra? What's a lunar eclipse? What's a solar eclipse? What do the phases of the moon have to do with eclipses? And what's a partial eclipse versus a total eclipse? All right, so I am going to take a 2-minute break. I'm going to stop the share. And I am going to say, hey, how are you doing? You can turn on your camera and give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down and a neutral. You could put a question in there. Am I going too fast, too slow? Are you just dying to learn about ellipses and what they have to do with each other? Do you think you can use any of this in your classroom? Maybe this week or next week, or maybe before the April eclipse? Okay. Or like me, so I'm the kind of kid who very privileged life, despite my parents growing up in poverty. They escaped poverty. I grew up upwardly mobile, have a zillion wonderful advantages in my life. But if I were in school now, they'd label me ADHD, okay? Because I have to stand up and move. Oh, look at that. He's got his sun shirt on. All right, all right. All right, so feel free to take a little stretch. I got 4 new messages. There they are. All right, clicking on everything says access denied. That's because I don't have your email addresses yet. So what I'll need to do to get from Lori or Steve is everyone's email address to make you all have access to my Google Drive, or just make access to everyone in the universe. I could do that. I wasn't allowed to do that when I taught at a school district, but I could do that now. What's the harm? Okay, I'll give access to everyone, but I'll do that after the talk.
So Joe, I just want to say that was fabulous. Very, very clear.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you very much. I seem to know you from somewhere.
Probably.
All right.
In here.
All right, we're going to get back at it. Let's get back to ellipses. All right. All right, ellipses. What do I want you to learn? What is an ellipse? What do ellipses have to do with astronomical orbits? How can I make an ellipse? And what do ellipses and eclipses have in common? All right. So I think all of your students know what a circle is. And certainly grade 3 or 4 and up know that a circle is defined by its center and a radius. You got a center, you got a radius, you got yourself a circle. But what's an ellipse? Now, back in my day, we taught conic sections in algebra trig. I took it sophomore year at Columbia High School. I loved conic sections so much. True story. You're talking to a guy who, when the first calculator came out, which was that year, I saved up my $75 and I bought a scientific calculator in 1978. Very weak compared to today's. And my mother, sweet woman, rest in peace, Joanne Minato, wonderful, lovely woman, she made me a holster so that I could wear my calculator on my belt all day at school. And I was never so proud of anything as that calculator holster. And I went out, and this was hard to do in the 70s. I had a conic section t-shirt made. Yes, I did. I love conic sections. I know most school districts don't teach conic sections. I know that because I'm a private tutor now, and I tutor at Jesuit and many other schools. And all the Jesuit kids' math level is about twice as high as everywhere else, you know, privileged rich kids. And privileged kids who work really hard, to be fair, and have fantastic math curriculum, and they learn conic sections. But ellipses, here we go. What you do with an ellipse, oh, I have to go back here to annotate, spotlight again. A ellipse has two focal points, two foci. And this distance, they don't have one radius, they have A and B. And the mathematical definition is A plus B is a constant. And that defines one of the other conic sections. We're going to get into parabolas or hyperbolas here, but don't get me started. I'll pull out my conic section t-shirt if I have to. Okay. It's easy to draw an ellipse. I'm going to model this in a little bit. You take a piece of paper on a piece of cardboard and you put two push pins in it a certain distance apart. And you want to do a bunch of different distances. And you tie a string in a loop so it goes around the push pins, and you put in your pencil and you draw an ellipse. One of my favorite activities of all time to do is to draw an ellipse. Now, ellipses can be described by their eccentricity. A circle where the two focal points are merged to one has eccentricity 0. This thing right here that looks pretty much like a circle, if I just put it up there with nothing else, you'd say, I think, that's a circle. Well, it's not. The distance between the foci divided by the length of the major axis, and if you really want to learn what all that is, we'll have to give a talk on conic sections. But the major axis is this distance here. Divide that by the distance between the foci, you get 0.3. So something that's starting to look a little not circly is 0.3. There's 0.5, 0.7, 0.9, and 0.96. A circle has eccentricity 0. A straight line has eccentricity 1. All right, so one of the activities we're going to do after the talk is we're going to make an ellipse. I'm going to show you how to do that. This is an activity that you have the supplies to do, you could do tomorrow. And for those of you who want to teach some math, it's just division, just measurement division, 5th or 6th grade ability. You could measure the eccentricity of your ellipse. Oh, and there he is. So you all know about Copernicus, the Polish astronomer who took an idea that maybe he thought of, or maybe he borrowed from the Muslims, from the golden age of Islamic astronomy a few hundred years prior, or maybe he even borrowed it from the ancient Greeks. It had been around for a while. And Copernicus came up with the idea that the Earth was not the center of the universe. And even though Copernicus was a genius way ahead of his time, he was really hung on the idea that orbits had to be perfect circles. He broke through in so many areas, but he couldn't let go of circles, of orbits being circles. But along comes Johannes Kepler, and this is a whole different story. I have a whole different lesson about Tycho Brahe, his drunken moose. The high schoolers love the drunken moose story. The clairvoyant dwarf named Jep, and Johannes Kepler. But suffice it for now, Kepler was not an astronomer. He was a mathematician and a genius. And he got his hands on a whole bunch of data and proved empirically that orbits are ellipses. Now, I like to think that I'm a fun teacher. In fact, probably the greatest compliment I got, I taught, well, I'm still teaching, but I started a school in my parents' basement in Rockwood, Oregon, summer after my junior year of high school, teaching gifted kids. Because back then and there were no camps kids went to. And being the youngest of 6 children, there was a big empty basement, and I brought the ping pong table down there, and I put up signs all around the community, come learn science and math with Joe. I charged $2 per kid per hour. And I had a school, and I ran it for a couple of years. Meant to be a teacher. I like to think I'm fun, but I also like to think that I never lower my standards, and I'm very demanding. The greatest compliment I've ever got as a teacher, I hear it from parents every few years, is that I can't make sense of Mr. Minato. They report to their parents. He's the most fun teacher and the most difficult. He's the most challenging, demanding, the strictest rules, makes us work the hardest. His tests are the hardest, but he's still loads of fun. And this is one of the fun things I do, is I tell my students, I know we don't do extra credit anymore, but I do. I'm retired, I can do extra credit. If they'll take a formal portrait, I have costume supplies. If they'll, here we go to Kepler. Remember Kepler? He's got a neck and he's got a giant compass in his hand. If they will pose for me, this is Isaac Kepler-Erickson, with the neck ruff and with a giant protractor, which we have around the classroom. And it's legendary, and this is a different lesson again, that I, Joseph Arminato, do math recreationally. And I am in a 12-step program, but I am one who does math recreationally. Oh, and there's Marissa Kepler-Margolin and Harrison Kepler-Geiger. And then we do these, and I have lots of different costumes. And then we have an art show with my students dressed up as different great scientists in time. And then I always tell them, if they'll include this as their formal senior picture in the yearbook, they'll get 100 smackaroonies, 100 US American dollars from me if their senior picture is one of these. Nobody's taken me up on it yet. All right, so that's one of my activities. Take a Kepler-inspired portrait of yourself, and I provide the supplies. So Kepler did a lot of stuff, but this is Kepler's first law. The planets travel in ellipses with the sun at one focus. Kepler's 3 laws were so incredible. Oh my goodness. Determined entirely empirically. So here's what it means. At one focus is the sun. Remember the ellipse. At the other focus is nothing. And here's the Earth. In this picture, the Earth is traveling not in a circle around the sun, but an ellipse. And had Copernicus, who knew conic sections, we know that from his journals, had he been able to let go of the idea that orbits had to be perfect circles, he would have advanced science by 150 years. But it was Kepler, 150 years later, who figured that out. So cool. Now we're going to revise Kepler's first law. There it is repeated, but we now know that it's not just our solar system. This is true for the entire universe. Any orbiting small astronomical body will orbit their host in an ellipse with the host at one focus. Or specifically for today's talk, the moon orbits the Earth ellipse with the Earth at one focus. And that is the key to the annular eclipse. We're getting there. We're building tension. So here's what we got. I love this picture, even though there's problems with it. It's a good lesson for kids. You can't draw a perfect picture with astronomy. None of us can be perfect students, perfect children, perfect teachers, perfect spouses. We need to take each day and make the most of it. I like pointing out flaws in myself, and I have many to the students all the time. And I like pointing out flaws in diagrams, even when it's a diagram I love. So here's the Earth, and here is the moon's orbit around the Earth. It is an ellipse. Remember, we learned that. Okay, all orbits are ellipses. Now, the ellipse is greatly exaggerated. If the artist hadn't exaggerated it, it would just look like a circle and we lose our point. So over here at perigee, that's when the moon is closest to the Earth. And it looks a little bit larger. Just in the last 10 years, the idea of a supermoon has become very popular. Oh, by the way, I have separate lessons on that. Are they real? Are they in our head? Can I do an experiment to determine that? You can. My students have. Let's talk. Okay. And over here, greatly exaggerated, at apogee, when the moon is furthest from the Earth in its elliptical orbit, it looks slightly smaller. So these moons, of course, are exaggerated in size. The difference is exaggerated in size, and the orbit is exaggerated, but I think it still makes an incredibly important point. If there happens to be a new moon, everybody talks about supermoons during the full moon, but what about when the new moon is at perigee? That's a super new moon. Or when the new moon is at apogee, that means that the moon is smaller. Something further away is smaller. We can see, just looking at these numbers real quickly, about 40,000 kilometers difference out of 400. That's about 10%. That's trivial. It's not huge, but it's non-trivial. And that's, as an example, with the crux of the biscuit, okay? The actual eccentricity of an orbit is 0.0549. That's awfully close to a circle. If you were to draw it, you would say a circle. If you were to have a computer draw it, you'd look at it and say that's a circle, but it's not. It's not. Remember here, even the one that looked like a circle was 0.3, and we're talking 0.05. It's awfully close to a circle, but it's not a circle. And the fact that it isn't a circle is profound in so many ways, but it leads to our third act, eclipses and ellipses. I'm getting excited. I'm talking loud and fast. Okay. So here what we have on the left is a total solar eclipse, like we saw in 2017, when the moon's disk is the same size as the sun's disk, or even a little larger, and it blocks out the photosphere, the part of the sun that we see, so it becomes dark, and we can see the moon's corona. And if you saw that in 2017 or any other time in your life, it is truly an incredible experience. Total or coronal eclipses are life-changing eclipses. I understand why Mick, or is it Warren? I don't know. I understand why they fly around the world and watch solar eclipses and go on $10,000 cruises. And now that I'm semi-retired, maybe I'll even travel to the Midwest. My wife's sister lives in the path of the April eclipse. Maybe I'll go there. This is an annular eclipse. It's the same thing. The moon passes right in front of the sun, but it does so at apogee. When the moon is at or near its furthest point in its elliptical orbit around the Earth, and thus it appears smaller. Of course, the Earth travels in an ellipse around the sun, but that effect is so tiny as to not be relevant in discussion of eclipses. So the moon is going right in front of the sun, but it won't be big enough. And thus we call these ring of fire or annular eclipses. Now, already eclipse and ellipse is a bit of a tongue twister, but so is annular and annual. In fact, I think a lot of computer programs autocorrect annular to annual. There's nothing annual about these. They're annular, and annulus is a ring. Teach your kids a new math word, an annulus. Teach them about Johnny Cash, play Ring of Fire. And this, of course, here is a partial eclipse. And partial solar eclipses are what you're going to see in Portland. The moon's going to pass in front of the sun, but it's not going to reach annularity. It's going to, depending exactly where you are, almost totally cover the sun, but not. You can still observe it, and you can still do some neat sciencey things, but it's not annularity. And thus the annular eclipse. All right. Did you learn what's an ellipse? Did you learn what they have to do with astronomical orbits? And did you learn how to make one? Well, sort of, but we'll do more of that in a minute. All right, big picture. Remember, I always like to have the big picture for the day and details for the day. Did you learn what an eclipse is? Yeah, I think you probably already knew, but not your students maybe. And did you learn about ellipses and how they're related to eclipses, especially at annularity? All right, so I showed you a number of activities as part of this presentation. Here's another one. The Astronomical Society of the Pacific is a fantastic San Francisco-based organization. And they have a kit they'll sell you, which they call the Yardstick Eclipse. And I have the instructions on my website. And I have 10 copies of this. And if you really want it and you want to drive to Multnomah Village, I'll loan you a copy. But I'm taking them to Chiloquin. So you have to use it on my timeline. We'll talk. Okay. And you can do any sun or moon related activity just to excite your kids about the eclipse. It doesn't have to be about eclipses. This is one of my favorites. I do this all the time. Do you know this one? You can buy these white beads. They're ultraviolet sensitive. And then you have the kids make friendship bracelets or whatever, lanyards, whatever. And they're white. And then you do this just before you're going to go outside for another reason, and they think it's corny. And then they go outside, and the ultraviolet light from the sun turns them pretty colors. And they finally, you're doing something else, whether it's reading time, or you're doing a shadow activity in science, or you're doing a math lesson outside, or just recess, or whatever, community service. Somebody's going to notice that their friendship bracelet turned a variety of colors, and they're going to freak out. I bumped into a student, no lie, who's over 40 years old. I bumped into him. Yes, he was drunk and staggering out of a bar. I was just walking past. After actually, well, I won't say what it was after, but I'll tell you in a little bit about some of my volunteer tutoring. It was after some of my volunteer tutoring, which takes place in a cafe. And he came out and he told me he still has his UV sensitive bead bracelet.
Hey, Joe.
Get drunk. Yeah.
There's a question in the chat says, and Alicia says, does a total eclipse need the moon to be at perigee?
No, just not too close to apogee. So it needs to be roughly 2/3 of the ellipse, you'll get a total solar eclipse, and a third apogee and a third, you'll get an annular. But there's also, and I hadn't said this before, there's hybrid eclipses. Hybrid is where on part of the path on the Earth, it's total with the corona, and part it's annular.
Thank you.
I choose to include those here. Hey, so a fun thing we're doing in Chiloquin is I've worked with a professor who's sending up a balloon to 100,000 feet. And she has told me that all of these children in Chiloquin who are so disadvantaged, we're going to be doing all the activities that I showed you and some more. And we're going to make friendship bracelets, and we're going to put them on a balloon. And the balloon's going to go to 100,000 feet. That's not technically space, but it's above 99.5% of the atmosphere. And if we're lucky enough to retrieve our payload, the main reason for the balloon is college students are doing an experiment. The kids will get their friendship bracelet that not only changes color with the sun, but was 100,000 feet above the surface of the Earth. And if you want to do that, I have a deal for you at the end of the talk. You can make your own, and I'll put it on the payload. And you can have a bracelet you can show your kids that went to 100,000 feet. All right, so these are activities that I've mentioned. The umbra and penumbra, the phases of the moon, the make an ellipse, the Kepler-inspired photo, the eclipse yardstick, and a UV bracelet. Okay, there's a lunar eclipse. There's a total or coronal eclipse. There's a partial eclipse. And there's an annular eclipse. Of course, the best activity of all is observing the darn eclipse. It's on a Saturday. Okay, so if any of you are free and available and can make it to Chiloquin, I'm going to tell you about something I'm doing in just a little bit, or just make your own activity and get out and observe that eclipse. Now, there are safety concerns, especially with children, but with everyone. And after I show you some activities, I'm going to have a different short slideshow about things to do with kids when actually observing the eclipse, not in the classroom or the schoolyard ahead of time. That's the best activity. So here's the map. You can see here, I'm in Portland. I don't know where you are. Chiloquin is right down here where I'm going, right there. Bend, you got to go south Bend. You got to go south of Albany. You got to make it to at least Corvallis. You can make it down to Medford. You got to get in annularity to see annularity, but you can see the partial eclipse from anywhere here in the state of Oregon. And here's the national view. Actually, I shouldn't say that. No, I should. So here's the national view of annularity. These are the times for Chiloquin. You can go to this website. This individual from France has the most incredible eclipse website. It's linked on my webpage. And the start of the eclipse in Chiloquin is 8:05. That's the partial eclipse. So we'll be out there at the community park in Chiloquin with all of the children and their families from Chiloquin. And until 9:17, we'll safely observe the partial eclipse becoming more and more close. And then annularity, when the moon is in the middle of the sun and it's the ring of fire, 9:17 through 9:21. And then we'll have another hour 20 to watch the partial.
Oh, Joe, there was another question. So you will be able to see the ring of fire, but only for a short time?
So go back to this picture. If you are in this line right here, 4 minutes, 20 seconds, right at the middle of this. If you're right here in Corvallis, it's more like a minute. The closer you are to the black line, the less time. Medford, a minute or two. Did that make sense?
And then the follow-up is, so with the partial, will we see a ring of fire? You say it's going to be very short, but here in Portland.
No ring of fire unless you're between the two black lines.
Gotcha.
You'll see just the partial eclipse, but it'll be like a 98% partial eclipse in Portland. Did that answer questions?
Got it. She got it. Thank you.
So I think what I'll do now is go off of share and see if there's any other questions. Are there any other questions? Yeah, so no ring of fire in Portland. I think I answered most of these. All right. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to do something a little bit different. I am going to go back here, and I'm going to show you I'm going to attempt to show you a few of these activities. So I want to go to share screen now. And I want to share this screen. So do you now see my hand dancing? You do, don't you? Okay. I want to make this big. All right. So one of the first activities that I wanted to do was to show you, I need to take a 1 minute break or less to go get my daughter, who is going to be my assistant on this. She's standing by. So stretch for 1 minute. All right, I'm back. So what Ruby's going to do here, what I have right here, and I want to zoom in a little bit. There we go. I have right here just a cardboard box, like the top of a banker's box. And I have a push pin and a pencil stabbed in it. Ruby's going to turn on just an everyday clamp lamp that you have at your home or there. And I'm going to have to adjust the lighting. All right, there we go. Can you see, just with a piece of cardboard box and a pencil and a clamp lamp, you could have the students sketch the umbra and sketch the penumbra. Wow, you could do that tomorrow. Hey, amazing Ruby, make the light come closer. And then you could make this a more quantitative activity to ask them what happens if the light source is bigger, smaller, closer, further away. Now back up a little bit, Ruby. Oh, that's interesting. Things definitely change. Look, this is a much larger umbra and a much fainter penumbra. By the way, I have on my website little activity sheets where you can print out the instructions, you can gather supplies, and you can have your students do this in a rotation style. I also have an advanced 4-page activity, which I taught at high school level astronomy, which does this same activity more quantitatively, more set up for like a high school class. Now, Ruby, show us the hand activity. We're going to take the pencil out. The kids love this one. So this is Ruby's hand. And now shine the light a little more of an angle. And one student can hold the clamp lamp, one can hold the hand, and you can definitely see the umbra in her palm, very dark. There's no way a little ant right there could see the light. And the narrow part of her fingers is an umbra, but out here on the side of her fingers is penumbra. So you could turn this to in an art activity, and you could trace their hands. They could label umbra and penumbra. They could add some color, and you could have an art show. Thank you so much, Ruby. Now, the next activity we're going to do, Ruby, you're off duty for a while, but you can hang on a little bit. I'm going to do something that don't involve you. Oh, would you clamp that lamp up there, though, and shine it on here? Now I'm going to show you the make an eclipse activity. So I had referred before, actually, maybe a little brighter. Maybe put it like right here, pointing down. I love teaching. I love being a parent, but I will tell you something. It's nice being semi-retired and having adult children. Ruby's being so helpful. Okay, so there we go. Let me adjust this a little bit. I know you can't read this because of the Zoom and everything, but on my website, I have all these activities in card style with a minimum of words, kind of supplies, bulleted to do, additional to do, to think about. This one's for make an ellipse. This is one of my all-time favorites. All you need is a piece of cardboard. I use the top of the banker's box so that the push pins don't go through. And I have the kids just randomly put 2 pins in, and then I have them tie a loop of string a loop of string, like so. And then I have them take a pencil. And this is good eye-hand coordination because it's hard to get on the first try. And they draw an ellipse. Oh, and if they're dressed as Kepler, all the better, all the better. And they have now drawn their own ellipse. And for younger kids, you can have them all do this and put their name on it. Joey, that's what I went by in elementary school. And then you could be done with it. And then different students could choose a different spacing of the foci. Oh, look at that. That loop of string is too small. Let's try a bigger one. We try this one. That one's too big. Well, they learn that sometimes in science, you have to keep working and try. Let's try this one. Let's draw another ellipse. Oh, that's going to go off a little bit. It's too big, but oops, no, it's not too big. I messed up. Let's try it again. There we go. Oh, look at that. The same thing. And we got a more squashed circle. Everybody can do that. And then you can make an art show where you go from least eccentricity to most eccentricity. But if your kids are learning measurement and division, of course, I have an advanced card on calculating eccentricity. And here is an example. I did this activity at the Ida B. Wells High School Astronomy Club. I'll tell you about that in a little bit because it's actually open to students statewide. We have students all over the state in our Ida B. Wells Astronomy Club. We did this last Monday and the students did it. And here's a picture of eccentricity 0.12. Well, it's pretty much like a circle. You need to measure different quantities of the ellipse and do some division and calculate eccentricity. Eccentricity 0.47 and eccentricity 0.82. They're all ellipses, but they have different eccentricity. And eccentricity of an ellipse is what leads to an annular eclipse. Okay, for this one, I have to stop sharing for a second so you can see my face. Is my face there? So let's see where I put this. I really want to stress, have fun with it. You can get this on the web very easily for a few dollars. A neck ruff, right? Fake beard, right? And where is it? Where is it? Every classroom should have a giant protractor, a giant compass. I have all kinds of giant math tools. And whenever I use them, I hold them up like this. And at the first time I use them, I say, the protractor of death. And then the rest of the year, whenever I get out a giant math tool, the children all chant together, the protractor of death. You know, you make it exciting. So yes, have them take their Kepler inspired photograph. I'm saving, this is my special beard. Okay. All right, what was the next activity we were going to do? Oh, we were going to do the yardstick activity. Okay, let's go back to do the yardstick activity. And for that one, I shouldn't have sent Ruby away quite so quick. Okay, let me get Ruby. We'll do, hey, Ruby! Hey, Ruby, I need you back already. Okay. So the Astronomical Society of the Pacific sells these Eclipse yardstick kits. And it's, I don't know why they sell the yardstick. And normally I'm a totally metric guy, but for this activity, you have to use a yardstick. And the reason is because you want to make the scale right there. There's the Earth. And you can buy beads that are an inch diameter. And it turns out the diameter of the 4 times the diameter of the moon. And it's pretty easy to get little beads that are 1/4 inch. And then you mount them on toothpicks and then put them on a yardstick. And it turns out at this scale, the distance between the moon and the earth is 30 inches. So while I am a metric guy, I will make an exception. And then what you do is you go outside on a sunny day and you have a screen, meaning a blank piece of paper on a clipboard, and you place your back to the sun. The detailed instruction and a video are on my website, and you can model solar and lunar eclipses with the yardstick kit. Yes, you can buy those from the American Astronomical Society of the Pacific, and I encourage you to support them. They're totally affordable. But if you want to do this and you're in Portland, I have 10. I'll loan you one. Probably also make your own. Okay, if you've got a good bead store nearby with 1-inch beads and 1/4 inch beads. Okay, so if though it's raining or cloudy, this activity also works indoors. So we're going to try to show you this. I don't know how well this is going to work. What Ruby's going to do, I'm going to model it. We'll see if it works. Ruby is going to take the screen. Go stand back there, Ruby. And I have, oh, Ruby, I got to unplug and replug. We rehearsed this in a different part of the bedroom. Hang on, hang on. So what I have here is just a routine household clamp lamp that you're all familiar with. Okay, this is going to be our sun, and I'm going to take the yardstick. This is a 3-kit activity. We're doing it with 2 here. And you line up the sun so that it's shining on the earth, and you get the earth's shadow on the screen back there. So let's see here, really. You get the earth's shadow on the screen, and then you put the moon in the shadow of the earth. And you've just modeled an eclipse to scale. And then you flip it around, and the earth flies off and goes rolling. And this one's quite a bit harder. Oh, there can you see? I don't know if you guys can see online, but we can really see the shadow of the earth. And when we get it all lined up, you can see the shadow of the moon going on the earth. All right. It's really hard to show that on a webinar, but it works. I've done it. I've done it with kids down to about 5th grade. I am in the process of developing a K-4 version of that because I found it doesn't work K-4. And I had hoped to have that ready for you, but that's probably what we're going to do in Chilliquin for the eclipse, because we are doing K-12 there. All right. Oh, and one more activity here.
That's my favorite.
This one's pretty cool. I am going to go back here. To this. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. So I have a box of these white beads. And I'm supposed to have an ultraviolet lamp. Here it is. And you take the ultraviolet lamp and you shine it on the beads. And can you see what's happening? The beads that are being shined on are turning pretty colors. And you can make bracelets or necklaces or whatever.
Joe, can you adjust your camera to show the beads?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was. Let's try that again. Okay. Are they there now?
That looks good. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's right.
So this is the ultraviolet flashlight. Let's get some new white ones, and you shine them on the beads. And in just a few seconds, they turn pretty colors. Oh, by the way, this is also a health lesson. If these beads stay bright for 15 minutes, you need to either get out of the sun or put on sunscreen. Prevent sun cancer. UV beads. All right, let's take a second here. And I'm going to stop sharing there. And I would like to go back and remember how good we used to be at Zoom? I have definitely lost my touch.
Yeah, I have the same issue.
But that's kind of a good thing, isn't it? So
I
let's
think
try
so.
here again. So I had told you before that I'm semi-retired and I have a website and I do a lot of fun things. I did want to just take a second to tell you about this project that my wife and I do. There's a little cafe in Multnomah Village, that's southwest Portland, called the Fat City Cafe. I've been going there for decades. It's a little greasy spoon, inexpensive food, a community gathering place. It's open breakfast and lunch. And every Wednesday night, Amy and I open it up for free drop-in tutoring. And we use peer tutors, high school students, former students of mine, college students, retired teachers. And on a given weekend between 7 and 9, we'll have 30 to 50 high school students come in and get anywhere from half an hour to 2 hours of tutoring. It's incredibly successful. We've gotten a lot of press coverage from around the region, and a lot of people asking us to replicate it in every community in Portland. Community members who are qualified offering free tutoring for every kid. And we do everything from AP Physics to remedial, we do just high school, to remedial high school math, learning basic algebra, learning the times tables, from writing college essays to Stanford, that's my wife's specialty, to learning basic commas. And Amy and I do a lot of the tutoring, but so do a lot of other volunteers, and so do a lot of high school students. Why am I telling you this? Because it's some of the best work I've ever done, and I'm proud of it. And I don't want to do it, though. I don't want to be a bureaucrat. I don't want to do anything but teach children from here on out. So I want to replicate this in other communities. I want you to steal the idea, or whatever you call it. But we do need a little money, and this is where it comes in. If you want a UV bead bracelet that makes it up to 100,000 feet, I will give you the supplies. You can come over to my house, make the bracelet. I'll send it up on the balloon if you will make a donation supporting the Smart City Learning Cafe of any amount that you feel is appropriate. Okay. So anyone who's near Portland or comes to Chiloquin can do that. And then you can show your kids your bracelet or necklace or lanyard that went up in a balloon to 100,000 feet. Anyway, thank you for indulging me to show you about there. If you really want to learn more about me, which I doubt, there's my homepage. I also am available for hire for teachers. I have a number of teachers that I coach right now who are amazing people, mostly like people like Shruti, who was a PhD in electrical engineering, master's in physics, and left the semiconductor world to teach high school physics. Good for her, Shruti. Brilliant woman, but beginning middle life teacher. And so I coach her a little bit, not through any school district, totally on the side. And I have rates and things for that. And that's how I'm supporting myself. But what I really wanted to show you here was the Youth Astronomy Club. We have an astronomy club that we've had forever at Ida B. Wells High School. And we have guest students from all around the state. And they join us by Zoom during the school year. And we do summer activities. Sometimes they're a week long, camping. Sometimes we do research. Sometimes we publish peer-reviewed papers. This is something I want to do until I die. And hopefully that won't be in the next 30 years. And if you have a kid, this is high school, who you think would really benefit from belonging to an astronomy club with other astro nerds around the state, you just have to connect me to that kid, and we'll get them going. Also, every summer I do a big astronomy fest at this place right here, Wallowa Lake State Park. And I take kids from the astronomy club, and they come and they lead many nights of free stargazing to the public, both the locals in Wallowa County, and it's a big vacation area, and the vacationers. Super fun. Maybe you want to join us one of these years and bring a few high schoolers. The high schoolers are really the stars. They're leading astronomy outings in extremely dark skies. Very, very fun. And this is what I'm doing next week. Amy and I, my wife and I, we're going to Chiloquin. Well, Joseph's a small town in Oregon. It's a small town that's not wrecked by poverty. Chiloquin is wrecked by poverty, and it's 60% Native American, which just should make all of us sick to our stomachs, the way that my culture, I'm of Italian descent, destroyed their culture, and they're still reeling from it. The least I can do is come down for a week and teach them all about eclipses, have them make bracelets that are going to go up to 100,000 feet. And we're doing all kinds of fun, free activities, not advertised. These are only for the people in Chiloquin. There's tons of eclipse parties around the state that wealthy people can pay to and go to. Ours is strictly drug and alcohol free, strictly family friendly. But if any of you teachers live near Chiloquin and want to come and help, talk to me. Talk to me. You can also just borrow all of the ideas. And then the other thing we started with is all of the lessons are here, or a few of the links aren't active yet. I have just decided that I'm not worried about any sort of security or anything. I will make the Google, as soon as I'm done with this presentation, I will make the Google permissions to allow anyone. So you can share that with your teachers, and you can explore this. Like I said, some of these activities, you have the supplies, you could do them tomorrow. There's some I talked about and some I didn't talk about, and some fabulous resources. But I do have one more thing I have to do here. I need to give you my talk, and it's short, on viewing an eclipse safely while learning and having fun. Or how I learned to stop worrying and love angularity. All right, so lunar eclipses. They will come along, and they're at night, so you're never going to have a lunar eclipse party during the day, but you can teach about them. And as we know, they're no more common than solar eclipses, but we can see them half of the time. There will be lunar eclipses in the next few years that you can watch. I have a link on my website to when they will be. And there's no safety issues other than being out at night. Okay. Yeah, stepping in front of a car or something. But there's no safety issues with getting your eyes burned out by the sun. Now, for solar eclipses, whether they're total, annular, or partial, there are safety issues beyond common sense safety issues related to eye safety. So how do we safely view a solar eclipse? Okay, well, here are the 3 things I want you to learn. How can I safely view a solar eclipse and learn and have fun? So first of all, never look at the sun. Don't do this ever, period. Tell your kids that. And never, ever, ever look at the sun with any kind of optical aid, binoculars, telescope, or anything, even for an instant. And this one I struggle with a little bit. Don't do any photography of the sun, not for school children. Now, that said, I have a handful of advanced high schoolers who take phenomenal photographs of the sun, but we want to tell anyone below 10th grade, no, you're going to damage your equipment. You might damage your eyes. You're not going to get photographs. That's for a young adult under the guidance of someone who knows what they're doing with proper filters. But the short answer is don't photograph it. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Let people who are older do the photography. Now, there is going to be a total eclipse, but it's not going to be in Oregon in April. And many people, many of you and some of your students who are old enough will remember that during totality in 2017, we took off our safety glasses. That's because for a couple of minutes, the moon totally blocked the Earth's photosphere. And you wanted to take your protection off so that you could see the corona. Okay, and unfortunately, that's a beautiful thing, and we all took our glasses off. I was leading Eclipse party, and we announced loudly through a megaphone when you could take your glasses off and when you need to put them back on. But the problem with that is some people may remember that and think they can take their glasses off during annularity, and they can't. You reveal any partial eclipse and the entire annular eclipse with certified eclipse glasses. Any part, wait, can you guys see my screen?
Yes,
Yeah, you could?
you're breaking up a little bit, but we can still
Oh.
hear you and see your
Could you see my screen with the slides?
Yep.
Oh, I panicked there for a second. Sorry. Now back to that darn page. Hang on. I'm almost done. You've been troopers. All right, yeah. So you got to wear your glasses. Now, viewing the annular eclipse, this is a slide to show your kids. You don't take them off during annularity because the ring of fire is still the photosphere of the sun. It can still cause permanent blindness. It can still damage your eyes, even though it doesn't hurt. Very important. Eclipse glasses, certified eclipse glasses on throughout the entire eclipse, including annularity. And of course, you got to get a hold of some eclipse glasses. Okay. I just wrote to NASA and they sent me 1,000. Okay. So I'm going to be handing those out in Chiloquin. It's too late for you to probably do that, but you could go online. There's many sources. I've got a few linked on the website where you could buy some and get them delivered, but you'll have to pay for them. There is proper etiquette. I don't know, there's etiquette, safety for putting on eclipse glasses. You look down, you put on the glasses, you view the sun, you look down again, you take off the glasses, and you look away from the sun. So teachers and adults need to model that for children. Don't look at the sun and then put your safety glasses on. And never use eclipse glasses with magnification. Here am I modeling the wrong thing to do. I've got my safety glasses, but I wanted to use my binoculars. No. Eclipse glasses are good for naked eye viewing only. No. Bad Joey. No. Don't do that. Serious amateurs have all kinds of equipment, and serious amateurs who know what they're doing should use it, and they should share it with children. But somebody who found an old solar filter in a closet and threw it on a telescope should not be sharing that with children or themselves. And we, as responsible adults, have to make sure that anyone who's going to be anywhere with equipment has approved equipment that they know how to use, that they're confident they know how to use before they start lining up other people, including children, especially children, to look. Only special training. But now, okay, so that was all scary. There's a lot you can do with equipment you can make at home. So I have an Italian descent. That is my favorite thing in the world. That's my code word teaching. Spaghetti. Okay, that's a colander. If you take a colander, any kid can hold up a colander and another kid hold up a screen, and look what happens. Spaghetti. You can see the partial eclipse. That's all you need is a colander and a screen. Ha, I love that. And you can watch the partial eclipse grow before annularity and shrink. And it's totally safe to look at the screen, not a mirror, but a piece of white paper, poster board or whatever. And if you're near a tree, the tree will do this for you. Try to set up where there's a tree and a house of light color. And the holes between the leaves act like the colander, and you can see partial eclipse all over the place. Oh, that makes me so happy. This is a great activity to do with kids. Get an old cardboard box, cut a hole here, and then tape aluminum foil with just a pinhole in it, a hole big enough for your head, and white paper here. And oh, there are some of my high school students. This Chiloquin thing I'm doing, I did a 3-day eclipse party at Western Oregon University in 2017, led by all high school students. 11 amazing high school students led a 3-day eclipse adventure for 300 people, drug and alcohol free and free admission. That's Alex and Anna. Oh, Deanna, guess what? Deanna is an elementary school teacher, and she sent me a note her first day of teaching a few weeks ago and said very nice things about why she became an elementary school teacher. And it almost makes me want to cry. Anna and Alex are both in grad school, and they're modeling one of these things we just made. The kids love this, and you can make it very easily. I have a video on my webpage on how to do that. You practice with the sun and you just see a circle of the sun, and then you do it and you see the partial eclipse. If you have a bird spotting scope, you can use it, block it there, make sure nobody looks through it, and you can project it onto a screen. But this is my favorite. This was just a participant at the 2017 eclipse who did it with her children. And here's just a little piece of paper with a hole, cardstock, or maybe that's foam, a little tin foil with a pinhole, and a little screen. And look what you get. Anybody can do that. You can make that with supplies you have in the classroom tomorrow. You could go out and make a pinhole camera and view the sun the next day it's sunny, and then they can go home and show their family. They don't have eclipse glasses, but they have a little projector like this. All right, did you learn what I wanted you to learn? I hope you did, that you can safely view a solar eclipse, and you can learn some cool things, have fun school activities, and have loads and loads of fun. And there is our final slide, the annular eclipse. Now, people might be disappointed that there's no corona at this one. Okay, well, you're going to have to take a trip across the country to the heartland in April. And that is my presentation.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. And everybody, I think if you could unmute, and then we can go ahead. I'll do a countdown, and then we could do an applause, and then we'll have a chance for questions. So unmute. 3, 2, 1.
Thank
All
you.
Yeah, thank you. That was wonderful. If you want to go ahead and just